Are you looking to buy a home in the state of Maryland? Well, if you are, I'm going to give you 5 things that you must know before buying a home in the state of Maryland. This is Diane Bullock with REMAX Executive, and I'm looking forward to giving you this information that I know will be helpful. Let's get started. First of all, did you know that a client can only be represented by one agent on one side? Meaning, if you are a buyer buying a home in the state of Maryland, your buyer's agent is only representing you. You cannot have the seller's agent represent you as well, because that seller's agent is only representing the interest of that seller, not your interest. So you would need to have your own separate buyer's agent. Now, in some other states, like in Washington, D.C., you can have the one agent represent both parties, but Maryland is a state where an agent can only represent one party at a time, which is good because there are a lot of fiduciary duties that are being done on behalf of that client, and you can't rightfully represent two parties' interests at the same time in one transaction, in my opinion. Number 2, did you know that in the state of Maryland, the transaction is only going to be held by a title company? There's no separate escrow company. It's just going to be the title company that receives funds, that disperses funds, that makes sure that you have lender's insurance, that there's title insurance, to make sure that all of your document prep and everything is done correctly, and to make sure that all the documents get filed where they need to be filed. And that's good because it cuts out a whole bunch of middlemen, and it only has that one title company that's handling and processing all of those documents. This is done on the buyer's behalf as well as the seller's behalf, really, because it's handling the transfer of a property from a seller to a buyer. Number 3, people always worry about the down payment necessary to purchase a home, and they think that you have to pay about 20% down on a property. That is not the case. There are different down payment amounts specified for different types of loans. For example, if you get an FHA loan, FHA requires 3.5% of the purchase price to be paid as your down payment. So, for example, if you're going to buy a house that's about $400,000 and your down payment has to be 3.5%, that means that you're going to pay $14,000 in your down payment. Okay, so that's not 20%, that is 3.5%. Now, for other loans like VA and FHA and USDA, those are different loans, so there are different down payment requirements for those as well. But the myth was that you had to pay about 20% down payment to purchase a home. And no, that is not the case. The down payment amount is consistent with the type of loan that you're getting by your lender. Next, in addition to having your down payment, in Maryland, you also have to pay your closing costs. Now, the closing costs are really anything other than your down payment. Now, the lenders break them down on your closing sheet, and there are fees like your lender charges, like your documentation fees, like your separate loan charges that come from your lender, title charges, and just miscellaneous fees that are all not a part of your down payment. Okay, so they vary depending on where you're purchasing, and whether there are certain things in your community like HOAs and all those kind of things where the seller's paid ahead of time for that, and then you have to they have to be reimbursed. These fees are going to be listed on your closing statement, but they are in addition to your down payment, and they are called closing cost fees. Another thing to consider when purchasing a home in Maryland, that depending on where you purchase this home, you may have different fees that are in some locations that are not in other locations. Now, the taxes are going to be different depending on where you buy, which county you buy in, and things like that. But in Baltimore City specifically, there's a thing called a ground rent. And the ground rent is where you own the structure of your home, but you don't own the land that that home was built on. Now, it's being phased out in Baltimore City, but it's been around forever. So what they're doing now is they're trying to do away with the ground rent, and in most transactions they have a cap or a limit that can be paid towards that ground rent until they can find that ground rent holder, if they're able to locate them, and just to get that paid off, so that you will just own the whole property, meaning the structure of the home and the land that it is built on. Again, this is mainly in Baltimore City. It's in a few other places, but again, like I said, it's being phased out. And by it being phased out, once you pay that cap, that will in turn have you owning that property in what is called fee simple ownership. Okay, and that was a ground rent, and more than likely you will find that in Baltimore City. However, it is being phased out. So if you see that, don't let it deter you from proceeding with your transaction, because it can be taken care of. Okay. Another thing to pay attention to is that in some areas in Maryland, in some locations, you have a tax on top of a tax. They call it a special tax. And in some places like Tacoma Park or Columbia, or in Hanover, Maryland, close to Arundel Mills Mall, these places have this special tax because of them being in close proximity to other things. And I'm guessing with Arundel Mills, it's because within recent years they built a casino and an outlet mall there. So the houses that are immediately surrounding that entertainment complex, they have what's called a special tax. Okay, it's not in all locations, but again, it's in places like Tacoma Park and Frederick and Columbia and Hanover. So just be sure to look at that when you look at the tax part of your home listing. Just look for whether it says that you just have that one city or county or state tax, and look for something that says special tax. That's something additional. One other thing that you want to pay close attention to when purchasing a home in Maryland is that you hear the term location, 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 or that phrase. That is really true, because depending on where you buy your home, the prices are going to change, sometimes dramatically. If you're buying a house, for example, in one of the Maryland suburbs, you'll be paying a lot higher than you will for some of the houses that you may find in the city, like in Baltimore City, or even over towards Maryland's Eastern Shore. If in some of the more rural locations, you'll find that there's a drastic change in the prices of homes. You can get, let's say, a 3,000 square foot home in one of the counties in Maryland, such as, let's say, Baltimore County or Howard County. You could buy a home that's like 3,000 square feet, and let's say if you pay about $400,000 for that home, and you go to the Eastern Shore, you could be paying something completely different for the exact same house, but it's just in a different location. I don't make the rules. This is just how they are, but that's something else for you to pay attention to when considering where you would want to live in Maryland. And I'm sure this is true in other places as well. One other thing to consider when looking to buy a house in the state of Maryland is looking for a school district. What I always recommend is that people go to greatschools.org and just look at some of the ratings for the schools. Different areas, the schools will be rated differently. You can get a really, really good education in the state of Maryland, just like you could anywhere else, but people are sometimes really specific about the types of school systems that they want to have their kids in. So I recommend you go to greatschools.org and look at the ratings for the schools. And if that is really important to you, you can choose your location based off of those schools. The final thing that I'd like to mention to you about buying a home in Maryland is that if you are a transplant coming here, and we call them transplants because we have everybody in this melting pot, you will get along just fine here. You will fit in just fine. There are a lot of military bases around, and we get people from all over the world coming here. There are a bunch of different cultures. You could immerse yourself into different cultures and learn something new about people. But this is a great place to live. I've been living in Maryland all of my life. I have traveled to so many places around the world, but Maryland is a place that I call home. And I'm sure if you're relocating here, you will love it as well. This is Diane Bullock with REMAX Executive, sharing a little bit of information to you about our great state of Maryland. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. Please subscribe to this channel. Please like this information, and please ring that bell to look out for more information that will be posted weekly. As I always say, have a fantastic day. Until next time, bye.